IVM.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to episode 49 of The Fighting G.O.A.T, where your host and host Somesh the Superhuman Kamra and Arjun aka Mystic Chips are back with yet another exciting episode where we'll be speaking on epic trilogies. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, we had 1 week off from the UFC. There were no fights, but we will be speaking on epic trilogies, the exciting fight between Strickland and Jack Hermansen coming up. All of this after this short commercial break.
Hey everybody, it's been another great week on the IVM Podcast Network. On The Habit Coach, Ashton talks to endocrinologist Dr. Altamas Sheikh. They discuss the various triggers for thyroid diseases and ways to keep our bodies safe from hypothyroidism. On Misconduct, we meet Unni Yarcha, legendary warrior of Malayalam literature. Raghavi and Nisha tell us how she took revenge against the man who killed her brother. On Press Decode, Sarah Bagda and Prafulla talk about illegal immigrations with reference to the Indian family that died while crossing the US-Canada border. On Ikka Dukka Economy, Abhinav and Dr. Junjunwala discuss the MSP farm law and its repercussions. And on Say No to Drama, Chetna tells us how we can make peace with the bad habits we just can't seem to quit. Also, just one quick announcement for everybody. We would like you to check out the new version of our Android app. It's available on the Play Store. It's a really interesting take on how to listen to podcasts. Do give it a look and let us know what you think. We're open to feedback on all of our social media channels. We're IVM Podcasts on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. Also, do remember, if you're enjoying this show or any of our other shows for that matter, please do tell a friend. Word of mouth really does help. And don't forget to rate us on any of the platforms you're listening to us on. And you can also check us out on YouTube. And we have a number of channels there at ivmpodcast.com/YouTube where you can take a look at them. And finally, we'd like to thank our sponsors this week, Bank of Baroda and CoinSwitch Kuber. Thank you so much for making this possible.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to The Fighting G.O.A.T. We have with us the fresh, the long-haired, the lean, the mean, the muscular mountain of muscle, Arjun aka Mystic Chips.
अरे लीन का तो मालूम नहीं पर getting there.
But mean to ho and mountain of muscle to hai hi hai.
Mountain of muscle hidden beneath the sandstorm.
Well, but we need the sandstorm. You know, look at Roy Nelson, look at Mark Hunt. We have the most epic guys with the pot bellies. So, ladies and gentlemen, don't disregard the pot belly. Arjun aka Mystic Chips, we meet again.
Yes,
after
sir.
A longish commercial break between us, man. We've not met for quite some time.
Yes, the commercial breaks were long but necessary as we are exclusive on IBM Podcast along with so many other awesome podcast content for you guys to listen to. This is, of course, Mystic Chips. Mera awaaz thoda baith gaya aaj, so I'm sounding a little strange.
You know, actually you're sounding like Anupam Mittal from Shark Tank, you know.
Could you be?
You know that.
Do not get me started on Shark Tank India, please.
Kyun? It's an awesome show.
Yes, but the thing is, don't you think everything in India is always dramatized to a point where it's becoming silly? Like the sharks there's more drama between the sharks happening than the actual innovation.
But isn't that why the show works?
No, but not in Dragon's Den and Shark Tank US. I mean,
it happened in Shark Tank US also. It happened. A lot of drama happened.
I saw one snippet where they were just doing, nahin, main 1 crore dalunga, nahin, tera 1 crore kya, main 1.5% lunga, tu kya 2% lega. I was like, what is this Bhindi Bazaar, man?
No. I pretty much like it. I love it. But speaking of what I love is, Chips, what you decided. We are going to be talking about epic trilogies. I mean...
Dude, no, wait, my friend. No. Before we even get to the epic trilogies part, we have to talk about the epic headlines of the week that have gone down.
Oh my God.
And in the MMA world, there has been full dhamaka because old reigning UFC lightweight champion and then Bellator contender, Benson Smooth Henderson, has managed to upset a 19-fight win streak and also has given Mr. Nurmagomedov, Khabib Nurmagomedov, his first coaching loss in the history of his career. Can you imagine?
Yes, that went down in Bellator MMA. Yes. Where Bendo, aka Benson Henderson, upset the coaching streak of Khabib.
He beat Islam Mamedov. Islam Mamedov was one of Khabib's students, and he beat him in a thrilling decision.
Right, right.
You know how Benson Henderson's fights, man. His fights are always close. In fact, one of his trilogies with Frankie Edgar were insane. It was awesome to see, and to see that how they always say this in sports, or in anything. If you can make God bleed, then the sharks are in the water.
Yeah.
And then they can smell the blood, and they will come for you.
Well, it's what we wanted to see if Charles Oliveira in the UFC would have ever faced Khabib Nurmagomedov.
Even though Khabib's not fighting it, it's not Khabib's loss per se, but it's still, there was this aura of, invincibility around that camp.
Yes.
There was this invincibility around that entire, Dagestani camp, the wrestlers. And then today we didn't even see her in prime Benson Henderson.
Yes.
Who said in the post-fight conference that, he doesn't know if he can keep putting on fights like the way he put on the last weekend. It's grueling, it's tough. He's 38 years old. And I think this might be the last time we might see him fight anywhere. This was his last fight on his Bellator contract as well.
Right. I mean, very, very interesting take. And I was so happy. I don't know if the viewers saw this, but Rashad Evans got a victory after almost 6 or 7 years? Maybe more than that?
No, more. Rashad Evans fought. It's around 12 years now. Rashad had more 10 years. Sorry.
9 years. He's not won since 2013, and he won in Eagle FC.
He did. It was the launch of Khabib's organization, Eagle FC. And Rashad is looking in shape. He looks good. Of course, we don't know. He went to a unanimous decision. He showed some good wrestling chops. And it's good to see some of the old lions still being able to do it.
Absolutely.
And apart from, Eagle FC and Bellator, and there's also a new company called Pillow Fighting Championships. And
what?
Have you not heard of this? Okay,
no.
we're going to get our producers to put in some visuals for you guys to watch. It's called Pillow Fighting Championships. Where guys,
please tell me you're joking on this one.
I'm not. I swear to God. I
know it's episode 49. I know we're having a crazy guest coming on. We want to be serious, but let's not do this.
Pillow Fighting Championships. I'm not screwing with you. I promise.
Oh my God.
And these guys are just taking. So they have a band which connects the wrist to the pillow, so the pillow doesn't lose grip. And both these guys are whacking the life out of each other. I saw spinning back fists with the pillow.
Really? Yeah. So is there also a husband and wife championship in this?
But I think, if any sport could have a cross gender, it's this one. Pillow fighting.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Because, come on, I don't think anybody has any major injuries. Nobody's taking it seriously.
Absolutely.
Everybody's just smiling at each other and hitting each other.
And you have a pillow sponsor also.
Yeah. You got so many pillow sponsors. Yeah, mattress sponsors, pillow sponsors, Sleep Well, Sleep Right, everything.
This championship has been sponsored by Kurlon.
Correct. It's sponsored by Kurlon.
Well, can you imagine that? Now we've started Pillow Fighting Championship. Imagine, that if Pillow Fighting Championship is on a log of wood and there's some water down, whacking these people, one of them falls in the water and the other guy's like, yay!
See, I'm telling you, that is the evolution of this now. It's going to happen. And then eventually it's going to come to Gila Towel Championship.
God. Then Aslam Bhai from Kurla is going to win in that.
Dude, half my school buddies will come and compete. I remember, man, how many wet towel whackings we got. It was I'm telling you, that could make a great sport, very dangerous and all. You could have a broken orbital bone with one of those shots. Yeah.
I actually didn't hear about this. This was so uncalled for. In my mind, I was thinking about the epic trilogies that we'll be speaking about, but Pillow Fighting Championship takes it to a whole new level.
No, Pillow Fighting Championship takes it to a whole new level. Speaking of another whole new level is the return of Jake Paul. He's actually made a diss track. A diss track is basically a diss track is a track that you release, a song to diss someone, to insult someone. And he's done it on Dana White, especially after this entire heavyweight controversy.
Wow, you know what? That's crazy. So, in fact, we're going to play that track for you in exactly 30 seconds. So, guys, just tune in. We're going to be plugging this in, and you can hear the distraction of this podcast.
No, man, no, we're not. We're probably going to have rights for that diss track because Jake Paul and his company are pretty solid about that kind of stuff. But no, there's been some crazy stuff going on in the world of MMA.
Right.
But we'll come back to it in just a bit because we're going to move on to now some of the best trilogies in the sport. We've had some great trilogies which have led to some epic rivalries and even better matchups. The only winners have been the fans. So stay tuned. We'll be right back after these quick messages. Don't go anywhere. You've been listening to The Fighting GOAT with Chips and Kamra.
What is the workplace and how does your gender and body affect your right at work? Hey, I'm Priya Mirza, and on the Longest Constitution podcast, we critically examine the vision of the Indian Constitution and laws. In season 1, we looked at sex, gender, sexuality in India, and the landmark judgments which transformed our rights as citizens in this country. In season 2, we discussed the laws which shape the workplace and examine how ability, competence, and merit impact us, and much more. Join me, Priya Mirza, every Wednesday only on the IVM Podcast app, website, and all the major podcast streaming platforms.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to The Fighting GOAT, where Arjun, aka Mystic Chips, and Somesh Superhuman Kamra are going to rack their brains and present the epic trilogies in the sport of mixed martial arts. Please remember, we cannot obviously cover all of them. We would love to hear from you, which are your epic trilogies in the world of boxing, in the world of MMA. And we are willing to give you some exciting prizes, some OG Fighting GOAT merchandise.
Some new merchandise that's come up.
We are having some new stuff. Yeah, we have some magnets and stuff also, man. It just looks so cool.
And
so
cool. And keychains. Let's not forget keychains.
Yes, we have some keychains.
Keychains coming up as well, which has gone out to a couple of our fans already. And we hopefully stay tuned to our Instagram. You're going to see a lot of that coming up.
Absolutely. Yes.
But
Mystic Chips.
Mr. Kamra.
Yes.
Boliye.
When you spoke of epic trilogies, my mind just went racing because suddenly there were so many good fights that just came in my mind. I'm like, dude, why haven't we spoken about this topic earlier? It's such a, we've been having guests and we've been speaking about a lot of stuff, but epic trilogies really, gets the fans back to the sport. Like someone who's kind of gone off the sport, gone busy, busy making money, got a child, this, that. But the moment you see, dude, Randy Couture and Tito Ortiz are fighting again, you're like, oh shit, let me get back.
Exactly. Before we get started into our favorite trilogies that went down in boxing and fighting history, MMA history, I just want, trilogies are such an important part of a sport. Whether it's a team playing each other 3 times, it's a concept of, of teams besting one another and then having a third match or fight to finally decide who's the winner.
Absolutely.
To finally decide who the champion is. It's called a rubber match.
Yes. And, absolutely.
And sometimes trilogies can even go into a fourth. Or, it sometimes happens. Just like in the case we're seeing the trilogy between Brandon Moreno and Davison Figueiredo.
Yes.
And now they're now dead even. The first one was a draw and both have one fight apiece.
Absolutely.
So now it's going to go into a fourth most likely.
Absolutely.
But, Mr. Kamra, I want you to get started at your 10th position. Tell me.
I would like to add one more point out here that there are times where, one particular fighter has fought 2 times and even beaten the opponent, but because it's been close, because the fans want it, because it's been exciting, they actually get into a third fight. And that is my first pick of the evening between Antonio Nogara and Heath Herring.
God. That was a great fight.
It is such an iconic fight for me because point number 1, I had to actually make notes to see when these guys fought, what exactly happened. They started off in Pride 17, which was in the boxing ring in Japan.
Saitama Arena
in Tokyo.
Love that place.
and the last one was in UFC 73 in the Octagon. So Nogara won the first one by unanimous decision. He won the second one by anaconda choke. But the fights were so close. They were so good that they had to get it done the third time. And Nogara again won by unanimous decision. The reason why this fight is so legendary for me is because Even though Heath Herring got knocked down a few times, he was taken down completely. He defended most of the takedowns. He escaped the submissions. He came back and he went to lose via decision. Hence, I feel at number 5 for me is Nogara versus Heath Herring. Also, in the third fight that they had in UFC, there was one point of time where Heath Herring gave a head kick that landed clean on Nogara and Nogara dropped.
Oh, I remember that.
And that's when people thought, oh my God, this is revenge time. But then he could not close the show. It went on to a unanimous decision. And Nogara, Little Nog won that fight and he was crowned the undisputed champ, at least of that trilogy. Very, very exciting. I mean, I hope you guys, Google awesome. It, check it out. And it's one of the most exciting trilogies that I have ever seen that went from Pride and ended with the UFC. So that's number 5 for me, Antonio Nogara and Heath Herring. Mr. Chips.
For me, at number 5, I would have to go to, of course, the reigning super featherweight champion in boxing was Manny Pacquiao, taking on Eric Morales. It was one of the best trilogies that we've seen in just a span of 1 year.
Wow.
So in the first fight between Eric Morales and Manny Pacquiao, it was a decision which Eric Morales won in 2005. He beat Manny Pacquiao.
Right.
But in 2006, in the second fight, it was a different Manny Pacquiao altogether. Manny Pacquiao in the 10th round finished off his opponent, knocked him out in the 10th round to win that super featherweight belt. And in the third fight, in the rubber match to see who was the undisputed champion, there was no question because Manny Pacquiao came out and ended it in the third round.
But third round, man. In that fight, do you think Manny Pacquiao just climbed leaps and bounds when it comes when it came to performance? He just upped his game like in 5x.
In that 1 year between 2005 and 2006, and between the performances in 2006 and late 2006, you could see a different animal. He increased his speed, his power, his footwork, his everything. I think it's around the same time he started working with Freddie Roach. And
wildcard boxing. Yes.
Correct.
Very true.
That's when his entire game had elevated.
Absolutely.
And he became, and you look at after that trilogy, that Manny Pacquiao walked away with 2 knockout wins in that trilogy and walked away with a blaze of glory into a career that just skyrocketed from that point on. So in my 5th position, that was one of the biggest trilogies in boxing in recent boxing that made a very big mark on the sport.
Wow. That is such a beautiful pick because we've been speaking so much about MMA that the boxing world, at least for me, has gone a little bit on the back foot. But when you say that, oh my God, that was so beautiful. And the fact that Manny Pacquiao climbed leaps and bounds, his performance was 5x. I just can't say anything more. It was incredible. Way too good. Way too good,
Let's go number 4, Mr. Kamra.
Number 4, it's a little debatable, but I have so many of them on my list. Number 4 for me is in Strikeforce. There was a fight in the lightweight division between Gilbert Melendez and Josh Thompson.
Oh my God. Melendez versus Thompson has been legendary. Guys, if you don't know who Gilbert Melendez, he's part of the Rat Pack, along with Nick Diaz, Nate Diaz, Jake Shields. There's a picture in black and white. A friend of mine showed me a picture in black and white.
Yeah.
With all these 4 guys in black hoodies and with Nate and Nick smoking their joints. It looked like that was a picture of badassery.
Well, that was a joint family there.
It is a fully joint family.
Well, getting back to number 4 for me is Gilbert Melendez and Josh Thompson. They fought in Strikeforce. The first fight of theirs was a unanimous decision, which went to Josh Thompson. The second one, unanimous decision to Gilbert Melendez. And the third one went to Gilbert Melendez via split decision.
Damn, that's
close. Can you imagine how close the third fight was?
It was very close.
It was so back and forth. There were so many takedowns. The hands were moving like, it was a whole new ball game. And when the third fight is a split decision, how close it really can be. Man, so my God,
crazy. I mean, they should have gone for a fourth. They should have gone for a fourth. They should have gone for, especially seeing what Josh Thompson did in the UFC. Josh Thompson is the only one to have knocked out Nate Diaz.
Yes,
he knocked out Nate Diaz, TKO'd technically.
Yes,
TKO'd Nate Diaz, which nobody has done.
Correct.
Nobody has managed to do, and Josh Thompson did it. Did it via head kick, and he finished him off with punches. So,
correct.
Even more motivation to go for that fourth. I'd love to see that.
Absolutely. So, number 4 for me is Josh Thompson versus Gilbert Melendez in
great
Strikeforce.
That's a great pick. For me, I'm going to roll to one of my favorite fighters. And I say roll because he was one of the greatest BJJ practitioners in the world. Both of them were great BJJ practitioners. Is BJ Penn versus Matt Hughes.
Oh my God.
A trilogy that went in lightweight and welterweight. And
wow.
Matt Hughes was the reigning welterweight champion. BJ Penn was the reigning lightweight champion. They both were kings of their divisions. And they went back and forth. I mean, BJ Penn submitted Matt Hughes by a rear naked choke in the first fight.
Yes.
Claimed the welterweight belt. Second fight, Matt Hughes came back and TKO'd BJ Penn for the finish. He got the finish. He stopped BJ Penn in the second.
Yes.
And the third fight took place after many years. It might have been one of the last few fights of Matt Hughes' career. And this is after he lost his belt. Neither of them were the champion at that point.
Yes.
And they were just looking to have some fun. And BJ Penn, in the first minute and a half, knocks out Matt Hughes.
Oh my God. You know, sometimes when these epic trilogies are in contention, you really don't care about belts.
No, nobody.
You don't care about
I don't
belts.
remember the belt. I don't even remember the belt. I don't. In any of the trilogies, I don't remember a belt.
Absolutely,
I actually couldn't give a rat's ass about the belt. It's because the fights were so good, and we saw two athletes at different stages of their lives. When BJ Penn beat Matt Hughes for the first time, BJ was the upcoming superstar.
Yes,
and Matt Hughes was the established champion.
Right.
The second time, the champion proved why he was the former champion, and he came back and won his belt back from BJ Penn.
But the third one,
well, that's just short.
God.
BJ Penn was BJ Penn, man. He, I keep saying this till today's date. A prime BJ Penn would have given Khabib Nurmagomedov hell.
Dude, imagine BJ Penn's boxing. Imagine BJ Penn's boxing versus Khabib. Or, agreed, Khabib could have taken him down and done all of that. But BJ off his back is something else.
Dude, I have never seen a man pull a rubber guard without touching his leg.
Yes. BJ Penn has.
BJ Penn has done that.
He's a god. If you
remember the fight between George St. Pierre and BJ Penn won.
Yeah.
BJ Penn. I firmly believe BJ Penn won that fight.
Correct.
Because those days, judging was based on just takedowns and holding somebody. They didn't count activity.
Correct.
They didn't count damage. If you look at the fight, George's face was busted up.
Completely.
He had bloodied George St. Pierre up. And from the ground, he held him in rubber guard so easily.
Like the Johnny Hendricks fight, with GSP.
So easily, dude. So, and the thing is so easy. And the thing is, and GSP is a big guy. He's a big welterweight.
He's a huge fellow.
On fight night, he walks around at 190. And he controlled him. To control GSP from the bottom is not an easy tactic.
Absolutely.
So BJ versus Matt Hughes, man. What a trilogy.
Such a great pick. Such a great pick.
Fighter, man.
Number 3 for me, again, it's very, very confusing. But number 3 for me is Frankie Edgar versus Gray Maynard.
That's a good one. Frankie Edgar versus Gray Maynard is a very, very good one.
In the lightweight division, they only fought in the UFC. They fought across. There was one fight night that they came through. Then there was UFC 125 and 136. The reason why I picked this fight is because the first one was won by Maynard via unanimous decision.
Yeah.
The second one was a draw.
Oh, man, I remember that.
And the third one, Edgar knocked him out. And
it was like, round.
He was like, oh, yeah. And I was like, oh, my God, this is completely
mental.
It was and Gray Maynard is somebody who has dynamite in those hands.
Dude, that's what I was saying. You remember the first and the second fight?
Yes.
That fight, especially the second fight, the one that went to a draw.
Yeah.
That first round, the fight could have been stopped 3 times.
Yeah, but it didn't.
It didn't, because I think the referees were, they just let it go back then.
Yes.
But I remember distinctly Frankie rolling, dropping so many times. He was dropped 4 times. Man.
Yes. That was so good.
Oh,
but,
man.
it changed in the third one. When Frankie Edgar knocked him out, I was like, oh my God, he has just sealed the deal here. And
that's true.
As I'm saying, ladies and gentlemen, please go and check out these fights because they are very interesting. Epic trilogies don't just mean 3 fights. They mean why these 2 fighters have got these 3 fights. So there could be a draw, split decision. The fans want it. All of those reasons, So, number 3 for me, Frankie Edgar versus Gray Maynard.
Okay, that is very, very interesting. My number 3 would actually be a fight that started in Pride and then finished off in the UFC. Is between Quinton Rampage Jackson and Wanderlei, the Axe Murderer.
Oh no, that was on my list too.
Dude, come on, we're both gonna have overlaps.
Oh
man.
God, that was something else. If people can see my face, I'm just putting both my hands up and saying, "Oh my God."
Incredible, because of the fact that in the first 2 fights in Pride, Wanderlei, the Axe Murderer Silva, was one of the scariest mofos you will ever see in the world of fighting.
Yes.
I mean, people shat their pants when they knew they were fighting Wanderlei. And
nobody signed contracts to fight him.
Nobody wanted to fight him.
Nobody wanted to fight him.
Nobody wanted to fight that entire camp. That entire shooter box, madhouse, Black House combined with shooter box camp, nobody wanted to touch.
It's not Black House. You rightly said it is Madhouse.
Madhouse camp. What it was. So anyway, coming back to the fights. In the first 2 fights, Wanderlei Silva brutally finished off Rampage Jackson. I mean, I'll never forget the visual of that knee that sent Rampage Jackson through the ropes, unconscious, stiff as a board, with his face busted up and bleeding.
And the referee didn't even blink. He's like, yes, bring it on.
The referee with his referee camera was taping it. He's like, Jara move down na dikh nahi raha. And it was but Pride was Pride, man. Those were
violent. It was violent.
Beautiful. It was a symphony of violence.
Correct.
And I remember when both the guys came back to the UFC, and of course, Rampage Jackson came in first to the UFC, and then Wanderlei Silva was the import who came in when that entire Pride era just walked in. All of the guys came in at one time. Crow Cop, Heath Herring, Nogueras, Wanderlei, Shogun, everybody came in at one time. Man, that was a great time in the UFC as well.
Anderson Silva also was one of the
Anderson
greatest.
Came separately because Maharaj hai na. But anyway, in the third fight, Somesh, if you remember the scene in that first round, and there was a lot of bad blood leading into that fight as well.
Yes.
The veins, there was Wanderlei doing his iconic, knuckle crunching and shoving stare down. And then in the first, Rampage lands a sweet left hook.
Yes.
That drops Wanderlei Silva. And then I remember Eve Levine tried to push Rampage off him, and Rampage still landing shots. And
Goodness.
And Mike Goldberg screaming it like, yeah, sometimes it happens in bad blood. And Joe Rogan is like, no, it doesn't.
Well, the good part of this particular fight, because it was also on my list, I realized that the first 2 fights were in middleweight, but when it went to the UFC, it was light heavyweight.
Oh, yes, correct. But Pride middleweight was a combination of the light heavyweight and middleweight.
Yes, true. But, when they went to the good part is that there are trilogies which are, which have gone on, spilled over to other organizations. It could also be in a different weight category. And that's true. And that's the awesome part, because, maybe after a while you can't cut weight, and both of these guys are like, listen, let's just pack on some muscle and let's throw down.
That's true.
You never know.
Very true.
But this was so beautiful, because I was in fact debating, is this number 1 for me? Because there was just so much, it was even drama before the fight.
That's true.
The fight itself was drama, but it was drama before the fight. And the best part is, even though the first 2 were won by Silva, the fans wanted a third one.
They wanted the third one. They had to see it, man.
Yeah.
It was one of those fights where you just have to see it.
Absolutely. In fact, this was so legendary. It was so legendary, and I'm so happy. I'm so happy that Rampage won the third one, because when you have the last laugh, you're like, yeah, I have won it, but in reality, you have lost 2 and you've won 1.
Yeah, exactly. But but it's a stamp. In those days, they never kept count. It was in the moment. Kabhi tu kal lad raha hai, tu kal jeeta, to you're the man. Yeah. It's not like I was the man 6 years ago.
Correct. And that's the best part about these old school guys. And speaking of old school guys,
what is your number 2, my friend?
Number 2 for me is Chuck Liddell versus Randy Couture in the light heavyweight division.
Oh my goodness.
And
the Iceman versus the Natural.
And people should know that even this trilogy was so back-to-back. It was UFC 43, UFC 52 and UFC 57, and it's over.
It's literally every third pay-per-view.
Absolutely.
Because back then also the roster was not as deep as it is today.
Correct.
And back then they were also, UFC was in a position where they had to sell out everything that they could.
Yes.
So they had their best foot forward, and they had their greatest champions taking on one another in every fight in that division.
Absolutely.
On those fight cards.
Ladies and gentlemen, the reason why I pick this particular trilogy, obviously, because two of the greatest MMA athletes of all time in the octagon, but all the three fights were finishes. The first one, Randy Couture via TKO. Second one, Chuck Liddell via KO. Third one, Chuck Liddell via KO. So I was like, oh my God, this is never going the distance.
It's never. I mean, with Randy Couture's style of boxing usually is the style to, is Greco-Roman wrestling and breaking down somebody in the clinch. The way he did to Vitor Belfort, the way he did to Tito Ortiz, to everybody.
Oh, yes.
And when he faced off his fights with Chuck Liddell, nobody at that point, people, those days what I loved was that nobody said it was going to be an upset or not. It was just going to be two badasses fighting.
Absolutely.
And there was no even though they may have been Vegas odds, they were kept private. But the thing is that it was 50-50 going in because they knew their styles.
Yes.
Nobody ever said that, oh, I don't think Randy's going to win. They said, they knew if Randy wins, he'll have to use his wrestling. If Chuck wins, he's going to use his hands. And that's what they said about the fight. But who knew? Randy used his wrestling and grinded out Chuck Liddell for a win.
Absolutely. In fact, the fights were for the belt. And it is the way it is because it went off beautifully. They all were finishes. Randy Couture beat Chuck Liddell the first time. Chuck Liddell came back and knocked out Randy the second time. And Chuck Liddell yet again repeated it in UFC 57. He knocked out Randy Couture in the third time.
Man, that was an epic trilogy.
That was absolutely, it was crazy. It was absolutely crazy.
It was absolutely insane. I love that era. I love that style of fighting. It was just pure badassery. No, they never took, it never took that long to solve their trilogies. It happened instantaneously. They're like, abhi lada tu, abhi kar.
I lost. Meet me in the next event. You see what I'm made of, boys.
Let me just recover. Let me recover and I'll come to you. I'll come back to you.
मैं जरा Gatorade पी के आता हूँ.
Correct. जरा नहा के आता हूँ. थोड़ा थक गया नींद मार के आता हूँ. And that's a great example of a great trilogy. So, and that's one of the reasons watching Randy Couture and Chuck Liddell got me into the sport.
Yes.
Honestly.
Yes.
Going to my number 2 pick was one of the greatest eras in UFC heavyweight history. It was a showdown between Kane Velasquez and Junior Dos Santos.
Oh my God.
That, my friend, was one of the greatest trilogies in my mind in the heavyweight division.
I feel, in fact, that trilogy is so good, the one that you mentioned. It was the first time where I saw a genuine wrestler versus a boxer. I think it was the first time where we really saw that.
I think it was also a moment where we saw a pure boxer versus the next breed of heavyweight fighter.
Yes.
Kane was not just a wrestler. He was a Division 2 wrestler who knew how to chain his wrestling perfectly. It was the start of the greatness of that camp at AKA. With Javier Mendez and Crazy Bob Cook.
Absolutely.
Because Kane Velasquez was their first champion that came out of AKA. And it opened the doors to that camp becoming something else. Wrestling became their MO.
Absolutely.
And Kane Velasquez, the way he fought, the first fight with Junior Dos Santos was this phenom from Brazil.
Yeah.
He came in and was knocking the ears off people. He was knocking the blocks of everybody he met.
Right.
He beat the tar out of Krokop. He knocked out Fabricio Verdum. He caught Verdum with such an uppercut.
Frank Mir.
We saw Verdum's ears wiggle.
Yeah.
With that knockout, with that uppercut knockout. Frank Mir.
That straight right to Frank Mir, and Frank just curled up and
he
dropped.
Stumbled back.
And Frank Mir is like a 260-pounder, massive heavyweight.
Plus. He had put on weight for Brock, remember?
And
he maintained that mass.
Junior, in his prime, knocked the living daylights out of these guys.
Dude, and that first fight with Kane Velasquez, where everybody was like, oh, Kane's going to do this, Kane's going to do that. The heavyweight champion of the world gets upset in 69 seconds.
Yes.
When Junior Dos Santos lands that monster of an overhand right.
And it was not even clean.
It was not. It hit the side of the neck, actually, just behind the ear. But the power that Junior comes with, the force he puts into that, was enough to send Kane tumbling down to the canvas.
Oh my God!
Then just a couple of punches to wrap up, and we had a new champion. But it was the story of the comeback, where Kane came back and across 5 rounds put on such a vicious beating on Junior Dos Santos.
Yes,
that it was hard to watch after a point, but props to Junior Dos Santos' chin, man. His chin, he
hung
took that
there.
punishment. And that's what led to that third fight. The bad blood came in that third fight. That iconic picture which I sent you was the third fight where Junior came and stared him down in the center and threw down the gauntlet saying that this is it. And that was such an interesting fight because in the first minute of the first round, he had Kane Velasquez stunned.
Yes.
He had Kane. It took one short hook from Junior to stun Kane Velasquez, but he came back, was better prepared. He was better conditioned. And that was a grueling fight, which the Kane Velasquez deserved it. He made Junior fell face forward in the fifth. The fight was stopped. He didn't quit. It was stopped at the mercy of the doctors.
Yes.
But that fight needed to have been stopped, man. It really needed to have been stopped.
True. But what a great trilogy.
Oh my God, what a performance. And Kane Velasquez, he was the undisputed badass of that era. Sad that his career got cut so short because of injuries. Yes. Honestly, he fought once in 1.5 years. And it's just because of I think it was just a habit of going very hard in the gym,
Yeah. And, it just could be recovery, like sometimes what happens when you have too many of these back-to-back fights, you don't recover this fast. And honestly, even if you're in the top 3 or 4, you're fighting at least once, sometimes twice in a year, so you just need to be very careful about your
Kane
schedules.
Was very prone to
injuries.
Yeah. He was very injury prone. It's like Dominic Cruz, man. Dominic Cruz went through 3 or 4 knee surgeries.
Yeah.
He's been out of the sport for many, many years. He was more out of the sport than in the sport, to be honest. Right. And same thing with Kane. Pure potential. I would have loved to see a prime Kane Velasquez take on Francis Ngannou or Stipe Miocic.
Well, they did fight, but the issue is that, again, Kane's knee buckled and he collapsed and he was in pain, not because of the shot.
Yes, I remember.
But Francis landed a clean shot and Kane's knee buckled and he fell down. So
That's true. That
was a good fight. That was a great fight. But I feel a prime Kane would even give Fedor a tough time. It would be a great fight. And that takes me to number 1.
There we go.
Ladies and gentlemen, please. It is, how Arjun Chipalkatti, how he idolizes Silva.
Yes, of course.
And Anderson Silva, the greatest of all time. Many of them idolize him. But my idol is none other than Fedor Emelianenko at the number 1 position. The trilogy is
the last emperor.
The last emperor, Fedor Emelianenko versus Pig Nog, which is Antonio Rodrigo Nogara. These gentlemen had a trilogy. It was in Pride 25. And the best part is that the next 2 fights happened in the same year in 2004 in Pride itself.
It's just incredible. I mean, it was there was a reason why Nogara was called Frankenstein or the Boogeyman.
Yeah.
And Fedor was called the Last Emperor.
Yes,
because of the temperature drop in the arena when he used to walk out.
Oh God, so true.
That stare, that cold stare, and you've met him.
So, I did.
Don't you? Did you get scared? Look at him. You're like, man,
I was excited. I was sweating, but I was cold. So I don't know what was happening at that point.
It's fear. No, the body's going into fear, dude. It's freaking Fedor Emelianenko. What do you expect?
I in fact met him when we had gone for the World Combat Games in, I think it was
in Russia, right?
In Russia, I think 2013 or 14. It was there, and one of my athletes was selected for the World Combat Games in Sambo. And Fedor was there, and because we were a part of the contingent, we could go and meet him. However, he was there only to sign books, and it strictly said no photos. And honestly, I didn't read that sign. I just went to him and I said, sir, I'm the biggest fan of yours, and I had that that eureka moment that my idol is in front of me. I just took his book. He signed his book for me, which I still have till date. He said, from Fedor with love. And it's a book on Sambo. And I said, listen, I didn't take a photo. He didn't understand English, but he knew I wanted a photo. And his, all his managers and all were like, no photo. But I said, listen, I don't care.
Yeah, I don't care. I'd rather get slammed by Fedor.
Either I get knocked out by Fedor or I get a photo. As simple as that. There's no 2-way out. And I just grabbed him and I said, I need a photo with you. And he said, yeah, please, and we took a photo. And that's my story with Fedor.
That is amazing, man. But honestly, that is amazing. But I remember so vividly because I used to love watching Fedor fight because it's one of the most. It was, people in modern MMA, a lot of analysts, I'm not going to say who, they used to call his overhand right sloppy. It was not. It was that overhand right used to come winging in because even if that right didn't connect, he would grab a hold of you Fedor was a master judoka and sambo specialist. He would grab a hold of you and toss you and twist that into an armbar all in one move.
Absolutely. So in fact, when he threw the overhand, in case he missed, it's a natural reaction to go. You take a single leg, you take a double leg, and he slams the living daylights out of you. So, Fedor didn't care if he flew out of the ring or anything of the sort.
Dude,
he didn't care.
Kevin Randleman slamming Fedor on his neck.
Yes.
And Fedor is like, la, 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 ye to hote rehta hai. And then bloody freaking Kimura's him after that.
Absolutely. But in fact, of course, Kevin Randleman is a great guy, but right now we're speaking on
coming back to the trilogy.
Nogara. So the reason why I picked this, of course, because I love Fedor. I love Nogara too. They have hung in the sport for a very, very long time. But the first fight was a unanimous decision that went to Fedor. The second one was a no contest. Do you remember that? When they head butted and Fedor had a huge cut out here.
Correct. I remember.
And the doctor stopped it. So at that point of time in Pride, if the doctor stopped it, it was a no contest and not a loss.
Technically, it should be a no contest only.
In modern MMA, those are considered as losses. But at that point of time, it was a no contest. And the best part is, if you remember, Nogara just got up and said, oh, what is all this? I don't know what's happening. I was winning the fight, this headbutt and all of that. And in the third fight, when Fedor said, I'm doing it in the same year, he came back and smashed Nogara with that vicious ground and pound.
Dude, but I remember so vividly, it was Nogara got his reputation for being the zombie man.
Yes.
It was because of, Fedor Emelianenko was one of the hardest hitting heavyweight fighters in the world. Hardest hitting people in the world. I would not even say heavyweight or light heavyweight. His body looked like he was a middleweight, but he fought at heavyweight. My point is that I have never seen a man take that kind of punishment. And
absolutely.
Fedor hit Nogara with everything, and you could see, for the first time I saw emotion in Fedor's eyes. It was like, what more do I do?
Well,
but you can't submit this guy. You're not going to submit Nogara in his prime.
Absolutely. And it's what happens when, you face someone like Tony Ferguson and you cannot knock him out because he's not going out.
Like Justin Gaethje.
Yes.
Gaethje went mad hitting him.
Yes.
He heard the shots. There were smacks and thunderous hits.
Yes.
And I think it was more of Gaethje's hands hurting. He was like, like enough.
Yeah. In fact, the original boogeyman was obviously Nogara. He took everything that Fedor threw at him. He didn't give up. But of course,
I've seen him take a head kick from Krokop and be okay.
Yes. Fedor is something else. But again, Nogara as a kid has had a truck run over him. He has this big scar on his back. So honestly, taking Fedor shot, I'm not saying it's not a very big thing, but when you have a truck run over you, literally, taking a shot is something that you can do. So
but it's over and over. I remember one of the more serious trilogies in the history of fighting, because it was no jokes. It was two great champions in their prime.
There was no bad blood. In terms of there was no bad talking in the press conference. They didn't.
Correct.
They
never spoke each other's language. One spoke Portuguese, one spoke Russian. So there was no talking only.
There was no talking. There was only action. But the reason why I picked this, of course, is because of Fedor and Nogara. And the first one went to Fedor as a unanimous decision. Second one, no contest. And Nogara put up that thing that, I was still winning and this happened.
But he was winning in the second fight. Honestly, he was winning. He had better passes. As we need to sit and watch it again.
Absolutely.
And we have to figure it out. But I think he was winning.
The third one, Fedor closed the show and went 2-up on Antonio Nogara, aka Big Nog. Mr. Chips,
fantastic, man.
What is your number one?
My number one is more in recent mixed martial arts. It's in the UFC heavyweight division. Again, it is Daniel Cormier versus Stipe Miocic.
Oh my God.
Daniel Cormier versus Stipe Miocic, again in the heavyweight division, was one of the greatest trilogies I've seen. Of course, Junior Dos Santos, Kane Velasquez should have been ideally my first, honestly, now that I'm thinking about it. But I would say more recently, Daniel Cormier is a two-weight, is a two-division champ, light heavyweight and heavyweight. God. He is an Olympian wrestler, and he took on, Stipe Miocic, who's a part-time fireman and a badass in every kind. In my eyes, he's been also one of the longest reigning champions in the heavyweight division. Defended,
absolutely.
I think 5 times he defended.
Five times. In the heavyweight division, the belt changes so quickly because it just takes one shot to knock anybody out.
Exactly.
The skull cannot take it. The power that these guys possess be it Rosenstrike, be it Ngannou, be it Derek Lewis, who's actually fighting.
Derek Lewis is the hardest hitting man in the world.
Absolutely, yes, absolutely. Those who have fought him have clearly said, listen, I'm sorry, but we have faced everybody, but Derek Lewis is something else. But speaking of power, oh my God, Stipe Miocic and DC is technical, is powerful, it's close, it's exciting, it's respect but disrespect.
It's funny, the first fight started off with absolute respect down the middle.
Yeah.
Where, in the second round, DC caught him in the clinch with, I think I would call it the most perfect uppercut that landed.
Yeah.
Because it caught Stipe so clean. And Stipe went down like one sack. He just fell and he got knocked out. And DC had become a two-division champ.
Was it like a short right hook?
It was short right. It was like a shovel punch. So it came sideways.
Yeah, right.
It was not a right in the clinch. He had him in a single collar tie.
Yeah.
And it was not exactly up the middle, but it came kind of sideways.
Oh, man. It did the job for him.
It did the job. It landed perfectly. And, that's what the entire AKA camp was saying, that DC at heavyweight has more power. And he proved it.
Correct.
He proved he had more power. But I also believe that is the exact positioning. Sometimes it's something that Anderson Silva was a master of. He was not the hardest puncher. He was not the fastest, but he was the most accurate puncher.
He was.
When he landed those punches in the right place, people went down immediately. He always believed that. And it's true. So the first fight was Daniel Cormier knocking out Stipe Miocic. The second fight was Stipe coming back with a vengeance. And in the fourth round, breaking down the champion, landing those huge hooks to the body, which slowed down DC.
Oh my God.
He slowed down DC over and over and then closed the show with a vicious combination, which dropped Daniel Cormier at the edge of the cage. To regain that belt. And then he did his little dance also, if you remember.
Oh, yes.
And then the third and final.
Croatian dance.
The Croatian dance that he did. But no, the real Croatian is only Mirko
Krokop.
And in the third fight, which was the rubber match, was a very highly touted close decision, which sadly ended in a bit of a controversial way where DC had his eye poked, and it was true. You could saw the condition of his eye.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not Belal Muhammad, Leon Edwards bad, but it was bad.
It was.
And it was really, really bad. But it's a very bittersweet way to end,
correct,
a trilogy. But that being said, on the scorecards, it was unanimous decision for Stipe Miocic. He was going to win anyway. So I think that was an end to a very long, drawn-out trilogy between two great champions.
That is such a beautiful trilogy, because I personally feel the fighters of 2004, 2007 versus the fighters today is very, very different. The fighters today are much more technical. They are smarter. They,
trained, more well-conditioned.
Better trained. They pace themselves out. The Quinton Rampage Jackson in 2005 would have just gone boom, boom, boom.
Correct.
But the younger fighters today are more sensible. They put up a better show. They talk well. So I think the packaging is much better.
Sir, no. But that does not apply to Yuri Prohaska.
Or Sean Strickland.
Or Gaethje.
Absolutely.
Or Tony. There are a couple of mental patients around also.
But speaking of Sean Strickland, ladies and gentlemen, you heard the 10 top trilogies from Mystic Chips and Somesh, the Superhuman. Kamra.
But, Mr. Kamra, we have a lot more coming up. In our final segment, where we're going to discuss our picks and, more importantly, the upcoming fight card next week between Jack Hermansen and Sean Strickland. So, guys, stay tuned. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back after these short messages.
You're the people pleaser, right? Oh, yes. Or then desperately seeking the one? Or wait, you're the one who doesn't think they're ever good enough. Oh. So much drama. And for what? Is it doing you any good? Listen to me. I'm Chetna, your favorite positive action coach. Yes, I'm the one who has been dropping all those truth bombs on every episode. Oh, no. And it's time you learn to say no to drama. That's also what my podcast is called. And a new episode is out every Monday and Wednesday on the IVM Podcast app, website, as well as all major podcasting platforms.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. I'm so tired after that epic trilogy that I had.
10 fights. It was a trilogy.
Yeah. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Fighting G.O.A.T. That was such an exciting discussion. Chips, you actually relived some of the top fights for me. I had not even made a list of these. But oh man, boxing, Manny Pacquiao, DC, Stipe Miocic, there's so much happening. And I'm so glad to be a part of this beautiful sport. And I'm so glad to have an awesome co-host like you on this beautiful...
Yes, sir. You too, Mera bhai. I love you.
Beautiful.
And this is on the cusp of our 50th. And this is on the cusp of our 50th episode coming up. So guys, expect something absolutely spectacular.
Yes.
Our 50th is one of our biggest. It's going to be a milestone episode.
Absolutely.
We're not going to tell you who's going to be there, what's going to happen. I'm not giving you any details. I'm just going to tell you that stay tuned. Something fun is going to happen.
But speaking of something fun, we have Sean Strickland taking on Jack Hermansen in the next fight night. Sean Strickland was supposed to face Luke Rockhold in his comeback fight.
You're still upset about that, no? I can tell you're upset.
I'm still upset. Why? Because Luke was talking a lot before the fight. He signed the contract. He got injured. Sean Strickland he's anyways not a very stable-headed guy. A lot of people, in fact, say...
Bisping has said.
We don't want to fight on the same card as Sean Strickland. A lot of people have said that because they're a little scared of him. So, Sean Strickland is like...
Did you see the footage of Sean Strickland's last fight at the Apex where he was talking to his opponent? What does it take to knock you out?
Sean Strickland was sparring with Dominic Reyes for this particular fight.
Oh, wow. Really?
And while sparring, he's actually talking to Dominic Reyes as if he's his bad blood opponent, saying, tell me, man, what you got? And he's whacking him with those leather gloves and he's pounding him and hitting him. And, Dominic Reyes is like kind of covering up and saying, listen, it's sparring. And he's just going for it. Having said that, ladies and gentlemen, a lot of fighters actually say they don't want to be on the same card as Sean Strickland because they're scared of him. He's probably the Salman Khan of UFC.
He probably is, yeah. On a good day, he's the greatest guy in the world. On a bad day,
I don't think so. But having said that, it's an exciting card which is happening in the Apex in the 25-foot octagon. Sean Strickland versus Jack Hermansen.
I don't like that octagon. It reminds me of a studio.
You know what? But the good part is that in the smaller octagon, there's lesser space. People don't go for the takedown. They want to really fight. They want to throw down. They want to end the fight. They want to celebrate and just go back.
And Strickland is one of those guys who will bait you into a slugfest.
Yes, he will.
He'll just say like, tu aana. The amount of talking. I think he and Kevin Holland, the amount of talking they do inside.
It's crazy.
Man.
I sometimes get worried, that while talking, if someone hits him,
he can get knocked out, dude.
His tongue will get bit, part of his tongue will fly out and he'll not care. He'll be like, listen, it's okay. I'll just get a replacement or I'll just cut the tongue off. I don't care. I don't need it.
Sellotape in the corner. You're like, time, doctor, sellotape.
But speaking of that, that's an exciting fight. Jack Hermansen, Sean Strickland in the middleweight division, which is 185 pounds. We also have Sam Alvey and Phil Hawes on the card, but we'll be speaking on Sean Strickland taking on Jack Hermansen.
Strickland Hermansen is going to be a great fight. It has the potential to be fight of the night. 5 rounds. Well, Strickland is a tough man to hang with for 5 rounds. But you know what? It all depends on Hermansen's game plan.
Yes.
I think the key to victory for him is to mix it up. You cannot stand in the pocket and swing with Sean Strickland. It's a stupid idea. It's the same thing that happened with, I'm sorry to quote a little older fight, but I remember when Brian Stan was in the middleweight division. And he made the mistake of standing in front of Wanderlei Silva, going toe-to-toe with Wanderlei Silva. And he got caught up in that entire camaraderie. He got caught up in that fun. He got caught up in that, I want to show you that I can bang too.
Yes.
And unfortunately, it didn't work out for him too well because after a point, Wanderlei's madhouse brain took over.
Right.
And then knocked out Brian Stan.
Absolutely.
But
Jack Hermansen...
Sean Strickland has that ability to do it, He has that ability to take that punishment. He probably would be getting hurt and saying, hit me more.
Correct.
And so he's like a scary person to fight. Shut up.
Well, Jack Hermansen, 33 years old from Sweden, who trains at this academy called Frontline Academy. His jiu-jitsu trainer, Eduardo Rios, has clearly said Jack Hermansen is in the best shape of his life and he's going to finish Sean Strickland.
Let's see. I mean, you never know, man. I've stopped, honestly, even though I'm on a great winning streak in terms of my picks. But and Mr. Kamra has he's won one, I think.
It's right now 742 that you have won and I've probably won 3.
742 million. You won like 1, I think. No, but my point is that these are one of the fights where I can't pick. I can just say one thing. If Sean Strickland keeps this on the feet, he has every chance in the world to knock out Hermansen.
Yeah.
And Hermansen, if he starts mixing it up and starts stifling him, he could very well tire out Sean Strickland. Use his wrestling, use his clinch work, use his great jiu-jitsu.
Yes.
If he can do that, this fight can have a different outcome. Either way, the only winners are us, the analysts and the fans.
Absolutely.
So
yes.
who's your pick, my friend?
Oh, see, Sean Strickland, Team Quest, old Dan Henderson kind of, camp. And I'm a huge fan of that era itself. Imagine just training with Matt Lindland and Dan Henderson at Team Quest itself seals a deal for me. Itself seals a deal. I'm just based on pure passion. I'm not applying logic to this one, but for me, it's going to be Sean Strickland.
Okay, I'm going to agree with you on the same. I want to choose Sean Strickland as well. And just that you reminded me a second ago about Team Quest, we forgot one of the greatest trilogies in the world was Dan Henderson versus Shogun Hua.
Oh.
One of the best trilogies that took place in the UFC was Dan Henderson versus Shogun freaking Hua.
Oh, wow.
We'll come back. And
didn't they also fight in Pride? I think they fought in Pride.
I think they fought 4 times then. No. They were to fight in Pride.
Okay. It didn't happen.
And Dan Henderson fought Wanderlei Silva and knocked out Wanderlei Silva.
Right.
But they met in the UFC and they fought 3 times and it was just brilliant. It was just epic. It was madness.
Absolutely.
But that takes me to our final segment. Guys, it has been such an incredible podcast. And, we've had our picks. So guys, if you've been listening to us, write to us on our social media about all the picks that you have. We're human. Sometimes we forget. Just like I remembered in the last moment, Hendo versus Shogun was also a trilogy.
Absolutely.
So, you can find me on Twitter. It's at the Mystic Chips, and on Instagram, I'm at Arjun Chips. Go Somesh.
Well, you can tag me on Instagram, somesh.kamra, and on Twitter, it's somesh_kamra. But ladies and gentlemen, don't forget to tag IVM Podcast across all platforms and get a chance to win some exciting OG Fighting G.O.A.T merchandise.
Yes, sir. A lot of good merchandise, some keychains, some t-shirts, and shout outs from both Mr. Kamra and I. Your chance to even be on the show coming soon. But that being said, we've had such an incredible podcast. So join us on our social media handles and always follow www.ivmpodcasts.com for a lot more podcasting content.
Did you say 6 W's there?
It's happening. I've gotten a little punchy. What can I do? So many trilogies, so many fights to talk about.
Oh God.
50वां episode आने वाला है, इसलिए थोड़ा सा tension हो रहा है. But that being said, the next you'll be hearing from us will be our 50-run mark, our half century, our 50th podcast. So stay tuned for a lot more content only on IVM Podcast. You've been listening to Mystic Chips and Superhuman Kamra only on the Fighting G.O.A.T.
Are you looking for finance products and services that can enhance your personal finance experience? Are you looking for a space to talk about your financial product or service? And are you looking for a crisp talk show where the conversation is all about money? Well, your search ends here. Hi, my name is Anupam Gupta and I'm host of the Paisa Vaisa podcast, and I invite you for the conversation about your personal finance on each Monday on the IVM Podcast app or the website or on any podcast streaming platforms. See you folks.
Don't you think that if everyone around you is getting smart, you better be smarter? Hey there, I'm the traveling professor Siddharth Deshmukh and I'm back with season 2 of my podcast to make you smarter. Smarter with Sid. What's this season's focus about? Well, it's about 10-minute nuggets that will make you stand out at work. It's time to go from smart to smarter. Tune in every Tuesday and Thursday and become smarter with Sid.